whiskey to go.
Whiskey to go-go.
Right. Probably just keeping your employees from drinking it all up while they drive it to the customer.
Don't look for anything I drink already. Gatorade, milk, water, whatever.
You got problems.
I'll go to the grocery store and get that Monsters. I get Monsters delivered by Amazon.
She said they're disputing that because it's something about, it wasn't there when they
Yeah.
We found a good place right now.
Send us some, after some messages.
I know, I can imagine. I can't, I couldn't. God, somebody chanted.
Good evening, everybody. Call to order. Let the record reflect that all members of council are here and present. And we'll move straight into the city administrator report. Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few items to mention this month. The Historic Preservation Commission candidates, we've got a few to interview. Les Russell and I will interview those. We're going to shoot for Monday and hope to have that for you the next night. So I hate to kind of come to that, but COVID's kind of wrinkled everybody's schedules. But we're going to shoot for that action next Tuesday. The contractor has mobilized on Church and Davis Street for the traffic calming out there this week. They're starting with erosion control, and then they're going to move into demo and then construction thereafter. They hope to conclude by early November with decent weather, so we'll shoot for the best there. The MAB development agreement, that's the public shopping center up on the north end of town. We are still hammering out a few details there, some cost sharing. We can get some of the terms nailed down. Perhaps I'll have it to you next week. If not, it'll be September. But there's a lot of work going on up there, as you've seen, and then a lot of work by our utility department and code office, and pretty much everyone. I mean, this is a mega project that the city really hasn't ever seen before, so everybody's involved. But I'm happy with the way it's progressing so far. Got an update from GDOT this week that a 2/10 of a mile section on West Spring Street, State Route 10, will be up for construction for a westbound through lane. So basically, that's going from the Paradise Shops through the intersection and terminating in front of Walmart, where it already has that right turn lane. So just like you have on the 138 side, you got the two through lanes that keep traffic moving. You'll have the same westbound on that part. We have no cost in that project. This is a quick response project with GDOT. And then last, I wanted to mention that we have qualifying for the District 6 seat special election. That begins August 17th through the 21st. If any candidates are going to put in for that qualifying.
Any questions for Mr. Probst?
Logan, is there a list of committed retailers and restaurants for the MAP development yet?
It's a short list right now. I can get you that.
I was just curious.
See,
6 or 7 retailers.
yes, the original, Ulta Beauty, Rec Room Shoes, Marshalls, Ross, and Publix. Right.
Those are the ones announced so far.
All right, so we'll know.
Moving to Central Services, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. First item, the police station, the build at Plaza, they have given us, I think, when I wrote this report last week, the completion date was tentatively October 9th. They've moved that up to September 21st right now with progress that they've made. So we're closely approaching the finish date for the police station. That'll be all the interior, get the exterior painted, and go from there. So we're moving along quickly and making large progress with everything out there. Facilities and grounds, during the month of July, everything grew at a pretty good rate. We cut 233 acres of grass over that period of July while picking up 2,500 pounds of trash. And then the other thing of note that I was going to touch on is the Stormwater Division Department. We have combined under one umbrella with the Streets Department, and it'll still be a Stormwater Division. Mr. Middlebrooks and myself and Mr. Probst had the discussion on personnel, equipment, vehicles, and whatnot. So that'll be managed ditches and pipes and everything under Public Works and under the Streets Division. And then, too, I fuss at Rodney for doing a rain dance yesterday right after he turned it over. We got to deal with that first thing. But overall, I think we did well. We threw all hands on deck in dealing with what we had come through here, two separate occasions. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bailey? Chris, I did have a fella call and told me he lost his Volkswagen Bug on Madison yesterday. Any idea how we're moving along there?
On South
South Madison?
CDBG project?
Yeah, we've just, I'd gotten a couple of calls, and I think Mr. Middlebrooks had actually discussed with a contractor that their priority this morning was to come in and fill holes where they'd already made existing cuts and patch that back and do a better job before they make any others, because we had had some issues with it. So, and he might can speak towards that. Or if I
I think you
nailed it.
probably said it all.
I thought you were actually missing a Volkswagen Bug in the flood yesterday.
No, but I appreciate you jumping on that, because that weather yesterday
That was
washed out.
bad.
Would have kind of been done. Moving to committee information, finance, please, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Thompson, we'll ask you for the finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Little. This is as of June. Overall expenses and revenues are trending as budgeted, with the exception of electric metered sales. That's due to the milder weather that we had up through June. Sales tax collections continue to increase. We had another increase over last year at this time as of July, which was a 21% increase over last year for sales tax. So that's a positive. We submitted to Department of Justice for our part of our CARES Act funding reimbursement of $32,226. So we hope to receive that in the next couple of weeks. We will be having a resolution come before you next week for our CARES Act funding through the state. Legal is reviewing it now. This is for the Phase 1 from the state for the CARES Act of $715,750 that we're eligible for reimbursement. We did receive 30% of that, which is $214,725 last week, and we hope to take advantage of the remainder of that as we can over the next month or so. This is actually for reimbursement of any COVID-related expenses or any expenses outside of budget. It does not reimburse us for any revenue shortfalls that we have encountered because of COVID, but it will help substantially. But I will answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions?
Will that be the money from the CARES Act? Will that be booked against salaries or?
It can reimburse salaries that were used for hazard pay or for COVID pay. Where, per the guidance from the CARES Act, if an employee is out because they have to be tested or because they have a family member they have to care for, we have to pay them outside of what is budgeted for them. So it will also reimburse us for that. But it will also reimburse actual expenses that we have as well, that we've had to pay for PPE or cleaning supplies or anything like that.
It'll just, from a standpoint of financials, it'll offset what the actual expense was.
Yes.
What did you ask, Larry? I didn't hear that. What did you say?
That the CARES Act money, when it comes in, will financially be booked to offset expenses directly. So if it was a salary expense that we filed for, it'll go back against salaries for that department that was involved.
Yeah, so Beth has been keeping up with it on an individual basis as to what the breakdown is, but also we're coding everything to the COVID-19 line item so that we can easily submit for reimbursement. But yes, we can go back once the revenues are received and then book against the proper department and line item from which it came.
We currently have close to $400,000 in expenses so far, or 350 to 400. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Any other questions? Thank you, Beth. That's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Garrett, Airport.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, sir. The report side of it's fairly short. We did have a very good month of June and July in fuel sales. We actually had 113 transactions both months and sold a little over 2,400 gallons. So those were good months, the best we've had this year due to COVID, a lot of things, weather-related earlier part of the year. And other than that, unless anybody has any questions, I've just got a couple items for the committee. The first one of which is I'm requesting approval of our DBE plan, which is a Disadvantaged Businesses Enterprise Program that we are required to have in place every 3 years for us to receive federal funding for projects and whatnot at the airport. And we are actually due to do that in fiscal year 21 of the state. So it'll cover years 21, 22, and 23. And you have to have them in place for any projects over $250,000, of which our first one will be the runway paving project, the rehabilitation, that's about $1.25 million. So requesting for the approval of that for $12,650 for GMC Network to perform that.
Do they have to be approved tonight?
Yes, sir.
Need a motion in?
Move to approve. I do have one question. Okay, hang on. It's 12,650, correct?
Correct, of which we'll apply for reimbursement, we'll only be responsible for $1,265
All right, well, then I'll move.
at the end of it.
Okay. I'll move, we approve this DBE in the amount of 12,650.
Second. I second it, and we'll move it to next week's agenda for approval. Hangar site construction.
Yes, sir, thank you. This is for, earlier in the year, we approved the agreement for L&M Aviation to build a 16-unit T-hangar on site, approved the ground lease and whatnot, and then we approved the design concept of the site plan a couple months back by GMC Network. This is for the actual construction and landscaping portion of that project for $78,854.60. And that's to get us site ready so that the company with the ground lease and the agreement to build the hangars can actually start construction. So asking that that be approved. And we will apply for reimbursement on this as well in fiscal year 2022, I believe, will be the way it'll work out.
We need a motion to approve and second.
I'll move we approve that one as well.
Second.
Motion and second. I don't suppose anybody oppose it. So we'll move it to next week's agenda for approval.
Thank you, sir.
That'll be all.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Moving to Public Works, Mr. Dickinson.
Solid waste report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. I do have a couple of items of interest. It didn't make it to your package, but I just cover it. We had 3 major projects we working on at the transfer station. They all done except for the wall. We got to get the wall repaired inside the building. Our tonnage is up for the month of June. That report is in there. And the transfer station tonnage is up over 1,000 tons compared to last year. So we're trending up in spite of the pandemic. And the last thing I have, I just want to update you on the glass. We got off to a pretty good start yesterday. We had 68 customers that opted in. Just some housekeeping. We're asking citizens to rinse the containers out, remove the caps and the lids, and you cannot mix with other material. And we do have a picture of the little truck that we retrofitted. That's what, if you see that truck on your street, that's what's picking up your glass. Other than that, that's all I have. Take any question that you might have. Oh, I do want to mention one thing I did need to mention. The process of handling the glass with the vendor, it's changed a little bit. They didn't get our container to us on time, so we're going to use our own container, and if we deliver, they have to pay us $25 a ton for the material. So there's a potential revenue source at that point.
I don't think I've heard anybody more excited than the calls I've been getting on that. So apparently all 80 or so people have let me know. I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
All right,
I've got it.
I don't see Mr. Still. You got that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I forgot to tell you before the meeting. The streets department, I'm gonna jump over to the sign and marking division. If you'll notice, the numbers dramatically increased in the month of June. That was after we had done a bit of a ride around and let some of the council members and other employees help us with signs that needed to be replaced, repaired, different things. After we ordered material, that replacement has taken process, so you can see the numbers are much higher than what they are and should continue into July. Other than that, the streets division has been rather busy, seeding parks and demoing pilot, doing a lot of grading work at the airport. We actually completed the west apron part of that project, which was the removal of the asphalt that was within the 240-foot buffer from runway center line. So I'll be glad to take any questions on anything else.
All right, no questions. That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Moving to utilities, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor. Electric and telecom, Mr. Thompson.
First, I want to thank Mr. Middlebrooks, Mr. Steele for their help today with, after yesterday's rain. We had a huge washout on some of our transmission poles coming in Spring Street. It was located by Rodney's crews inspecting the sewer line. And they walked the creek, and they found the situation, and called Jeremiah and Rodney, and they lent equipment, people, and help, and it was an expertise in moving dirt and rocks, and that was very, very helpful. We never could have got that fixed in the time frame that we did without their help. The construction for the first phase of the electric service to the pavilion project is complete. They had said they were going to have a general contractor by this week, and we're going to want temporary power next week. Not sure if they've got their general contractor yet. I haven't heard from them. We did our part. We got the power built in off of Charlotte Rowell down in the back behind where the Publix is going to sit. We're just waiting for locations for temp power poles. Once we get that, we'll get that power to them. That project is, as Logan said, moving along. There's a lot of design tweaking going on right now for conduits under the roadway for our part and for the lighting. The lighting, there is, I'll just say, a discrepancy in what I think and Logan thinks the lighting ought to be and what the owner thinks the light's going to be. We'll get to the end on that. We will be setting the transformers at the apartments on South Broad hopefully tomorrow. They finally got their curbs in. It's been the longest project I've ever worked on, I think, for as small as it is. But they called this morning and said they got their curbs poured, so we're going to try to set the transformers tomorrow or the next day. We are still continuing to receive large numbers of residential service orders, which is great. I had expected that to tail off, but it's been the thing that's kept us the busiest over these past few months. As Beth says, our power usage is down substantially because of the weather in January and starting in March, April on up until June. Now, July was hot, but it's going to take a real hot July, real hot August, a hot September, and maybe a real cold November to catch that number up. So it's just been surprising and very happily surprising how many residential services we are doing, and some commercial services we're putting in. We've got our 7-way micro duct solid all the way from the water tower all the way down 138 out to Road Road for a project we're working on. We actually got the fiber in today. Should be spliced that up by the end of the week, turn those customers on that are looking to get that service. CGNAT, something our engineers have been working on for a while. It's going as well as can be expected. We've got another shutdown tonight, about 2:30, and it's moving along. We haven't broken the system yet, and that's our goal is to do this in steps. And what CGNAT does is the current numbers of IP addresses are running out. So we're going to an IPv6, which takes a translation from the old stuff to the new stuff. And that just takes a lot of engineering, a lot of time, and a lot of effort to do it right and not break the system. And I'll take any questions y'all may have. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Middlebrooks, water, stormwater,
Thank you, Mr. Little.
gas.
Just a couple of updates on some projects. One being the Highway 11 South, the gas renewal that Harrison's working on. We're 60% complete with that job now. It's moving along rather well. Sewer collection, the 2018 CDBG that we talked about earlier on South Madison, I'm gonna cover these two together. All the main rehab is complete. So now it's time for the contractor to start replacing all the services. We did inform him that before he started, he had to make those repairs of those utility cuts. And while they were bursting on South Madison, we discovered that our gas main was eat up with corrosion. So I will be back to you next month, once we get these bids in, to have that steel main replaced. So you'll be seeing it next month. As far as the design review on the wastewater treatment plant, it's at EPD now. It's being reviewed. So hope to hear back from them pretty soon. And our Loganville water line is moving along very well. Just a few rock bores left to do, and the crossing of Troy Smith Road. They poured the foundation last week for the pump station, so all this moving well. And the raw water line, which is Wiedemann Singleton's doing the redesign on, I should say. It's complete, and it's being reviewed by EPD as well. So a lot of big projects coming up. If you got any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer those.
I do have one comment, Mr. Little. On the CDBG project, you know, we were supposed to pave that at the end of this project as part of the LMIG. But given that this project's going a little long with this contractor, we're kind of afraid to pave it in October, November, whenever this thing winds up. We got approval from GDOT to be able to roll that into the spring, the same funding. So we'll be looking at doing a full paving job of South Madison and some of the other side streets off in that general vicinity in the spring, as soon as paving season starts up.
Y'all must gonna do something until the spring, cause right now, we can't, that.
Yeah, they're supposed to stabilize it much better, but the actual full paving job that you would normally expect, like Alcovey Street was last year, that'll be done in the spring. Otherwise, if it goes too late in the season, you just won't be able to pave it.
When are they supposed to complete their project?
The contractor told us 2 months before they'll be completely finished.
Another 2 months?
Got 86 services to do now. They started this morning removing all the gravel and stuff that's in the holes, and started all the way back over, just they building it as they come up. So these should hold up a lot better than what they left last night.
Yeah, but after that, the city crews, the streets crews will get out there and do the deep patching, get it smoothed out, get it prepped and ready for the actual top coat paving in the spring.
Any other questions? That's all. Mr. Middlebrooks, you got a purchase?
Yes, asking for your approval to purchase a Wheelo RAS pump. This is the return activated sludge pump at the sewer plant. Low bid was from J.H. Wright at $15,542.
Are there any questions?
Chairman, I'll move approval of the pump purchase from J.H. Wright Associates in the amount of $15,542.
Motion by Mr. Larry Bradley. Is there a second? I'll second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We recommend that to full council.
Thank you.
Mayor, that's all utilities has.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Bradley, Public Safety.
Yeah, that's right. Ms. Chief Owens, give us the fire department report.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Overall, just standard numbers as usual. We got past the COVID back in May, so our numbers are starting to return back to normal. we did finish up all of our hydrant testing. There might be a spot here or two that we'll catch over the next few weeks. The biggest thing I did want to bring to the council today was, we were able to, select and hire a new fire marshal. His official first day is tomorrow. His name is Garrett Range. He actually comes from the city of Decatur. He was an inspector over there, and so we're bringing him on board, and he's a local. He actually lives on Church Street, of all things. So he'll be out and about. I'm sure you'll see him along the way, and we'll introduce him. The only other thing I have is ISO has called in a review for the fire department. Last time they did that was in 2015, and so that's coming up actually in September. But I'm not expecting anything. We've been working with Rodney and the water department on that, because that coexists, having the water with the fire. But otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. And then, Chief Watts for the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Overall, we're seeing a good reduction in crime for the month of June, which is what we want to see. I almost didn't want to say that because I'm afraid I'll speak some bad juju, but we've had a pretty good month for the month of June, pretty active. We answered a total calls of 1,815 calls, did 9,637 area checks, Part 1 crimes 14, Part 2 at 18, and made a total of 32 arrests. Our Joint Operations Unit, which is, you know, I always talk about those guys that are proactively on the street, they executed a total of 2 search warrants, were able to get 3 guns off the street, and made a total of 9 arrests themselves. And again, I mean, compared to last month to this month, it's been a great month for the month of June, and I look forward to keeping that trend going. And I'll be happy to answer any question, make any statements if you need to.
Thank you, Chief, and I'm glad to hear that good report. That's good. We also have a proposal for a resource officer with Walton County School.
That's correct. So the first one up is the renewal of the SRO contract with the Monroe Area High School with the Walton County School District. Just need recommendation for approval for council.
Any questions or comments?
No, sir, I move we approve.
Second.
Motion's approved and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passed. You got one other?
And the second contract is actual, need recommendation for approval for the Foothills SRO contract with the Walton County School District as well. Just needed approved by council.
We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. You have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
That's approved. We'll take it before the full council next week. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Thank you, everybody. Moving to planning and code, Ms. Malcolm.
Yes. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. This report covers the month of June for the code office. We had 56 permits written in that timeframe, had 7 new business licenses issued. Unfortunately, we zeroed that out with 7 closed businesses, and some of those were just change of ownership, so they were in both categories. The major projects we had are the ones you see all whenever you drive through town. Main Street Apartments moving along well, as Brian alluded to. They're going to be getting their transformer set, like he said, very soon, and they're hoping to start leasing before the end of the year is what their goal is, so hopefully they'll make it. John's Supermarket finished up and also got the restaurant open, so that's going on and done. Monroe Self Storage nearing completion. They've got CO on a couple of buildings and have started renting out storage spaces over on Breedlove Drive. And the road's coming along nicely. It's going to be a beautiful project. Whenever they get done with that, it's taken a minute, but I think it's going to be worth the wait. The city marshals removed 47 signs from the roadway, wrote 292 repair cleanup orders, and did the re-inspections on those. Investigated 5 utility tampering cases and issued 7 citations. And if there's any questions about any of that or any of the balance of the report, I'll be glad to answer them.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm. Mr. Bradley, Mr. Ross Bradley, Economic Development, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Crosby?
Thank you very much. In your report, we have updated numbers from Nextsite. This is where they track customers by pinging cell phones, and you can kind of see what is showing up as far as recovery, just comparing downtown with Walmart. You can see that it's still, as far as activity, not all the way back. It's really encouraging that sales tax is not reflecting that yet, but people, I guess, are spending when they do come. Those numbers are also down because we haven't had events. That also increases that. So I just wanted y'all to be able to look at those. I have more details if you'd like to see that in further detail with those. And they also have tracked some other shopping commercial centers that you can kind of see, just to get an idea of what customer traffic is looking like so far this year. Also, just want to say we are having new business growth. I mean, Patrick mentioned a couple of openings, but there has been a property sale in this last couple months, a couple of them. We have new businesses that are planning to open downtown. Things did pause, but they have by no means stopped, and so that's surprising but encouraging that people are still willing to open businesses in this climate, which is great. Also wanted to mention that we have entered into an updated use agreement with the Murray family for the West Highland parking lot. So we can now have access to clean that up and improve it, make it a little more efficient. And so that is in place and signed and executed. So that's really exciting, kind of the first step of getting the best efficiency out of existing parking. So we're really pleased that we have gotten that far with making that lot the best that it can be for downtown. Also included, we did have our DDA planning retreat last month and included the updated work plan and a summary of the notes from that retreat. A lot of it is very similar to goals that we've had in the past. The point of us clarifying these plans is it helps us define which projects the DDA is going to support the downtown development revolving loan funds for, and our work plan is what we use for the revolving loan funds to also guide us on where we do our future projects if we were to do another project similar to the L.R. Berger project. And the last thing to mention, you can see some pictures here. We had some teenagers volunteer through Love Where You Live with First Baptist last week. There was a downtown team, and they updated our alley. They painted some dumpsters. Danny worked with us on that, really appreciate it. The kids love doing that. They did a lot of projects, just cleaning things up, and it looks great. And they also were the first group to be our guinea pigs doing the Monroe Turtle Scavenger Hunt. So we have a permanent scavenger hunt now installed downtown. There's 10 turtles. The first one is right out here by the fountain, Myrtle. And they're all, if you scan that QR code, you should have a little rack card where you're sitting too. They're all named after Monroe historic figures, and they all are M names, and they're hidden all throughout downtown. So excited to finally have that out there. And we are planning on the concert this Friday at this point. So we're going to be gridding off the town green, so people will have socially distant spaces. We'll have masks available. We have a lot of standalone hand sanitizers that will be spaced out all over the field. And we just hope people will heed their better judgment and not come if they have been exposed or don't feel well. And we're going to try to go for it. So we'll see what that looks like. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Ms. Crosby? All right, thank you, ma'am. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Excited about this weekend. Parks, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, ma'am. The project at Pilot Park has started. We started last week, actually, grading, demo, took down the bushes over on the side of where the housing authority is, and then the neighbors that are adjacent to the park. The next plan of action is to actually let it dry out just a little bit, and then we're going to go back in, replace a little bit of a storm drain that was stopped up, and put the fence back that belonged to the neighbors that had their property kind of hidden from view. And then installers, with weather permitting, should be here on site this Thursday or Friday to begin working with our public works crews on the grading and the installation of the equipment. Over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would look for landscapers and sidewalks to start going in, and then the final fence being replaced. So fingers crossed and weather cooperating. I figured it 4 to 6 weeks for completion, and then we'll just see how everything takes and whether or not we can open it up to the public based on how current situation goes with the virus. So a lot of variables, but truth be told, it'll be done. Other areas, Matthews Park, currently I've had bids out for repair of the bathroom facility. I hope to actually have that, and we can discuss that on Thursday. A little more detail, and then Childers had a little bit of a meltdown, blowout, whatever you want to call it, yesterday. With the backside of the dam, I would say roughly about a third of it eroded with the overflow from the rains that we had. The standpipe did move. It either bent or it shifted. We're not real sure. Have contractors coming to take a look at it, and then we can kind of proceed with their suggestions. Also, potential engineer to come and take a look and figure out what we can do or what we should do, just for the overall safety of the area. I think it's the most important thing, and hopefully I'll have some ideas and some dollar numbers and some estimates on what we do going forward. So that's the parks update, and be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. That's it for parks.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Moving to the public hearing for the rezone at 335 West Spring Street. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is actually submitted by the Commission Chairman, Mr. Eccles. They're wanting to rezone this portion of a parcel. Takes a little bit of explanation, but it used to be a single parcel that went all the way through from Pinecrest to Spring Street. They split it in an effort to market the portion on Spring Street as a commercial site. It's been that way for 13 years. It hasn't been viable as a commercial site due to the proximity of the creek. And the homeowner that fronts on Pinecrest now wants to buy that piece of land back and rezone it and make it all residential zoning in order to not have a split zone parcel and for tax purposes. So they're making that request.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Hearing none, we'll talk about that next week. Appointment to the Planning Commission. Mike Eccles, who has served the Planning Commission for several years, his term will expire September of 2020. He has confirmed that he'd like to be reappointed for another 5-year term expiring September 1st. Are there any questions, or we just want to move that to next week as well? We'll move that to next week. Second reading of MGAG Supply Contract Amendment and Supplemental Contract for Portfolio 5 Project Ordinance. We'll have the second reading next week and move forward with that. Then we have the second reading for the Alcoholic Beverage Ordinance Amendment. We'll move that next week as well. I think Paul can read a lot faster than Russell. So. Items requiring action, the approval of the 2020 millage rate. Ms. Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is asking for the approval of the 2020 millage rate as presented with the rollback rate. I'm going to just read this off the 2020 tax digest from the county shows an increase of 7.29%. If the millage rate was left unchanged from 2019, this would qualify as a tax increase due to inflationary growth in the digest. Instead, it is recommended by staff to adopt the full rollback rate of 7.588 mils for 2020. This will give the city a prospective 4.35% increase coming from new growth in the digest, which translates to $143,275 more than 2019 at 100% of collections. This is a 0.214 mils less than 2019. The 5-year history of the digest with current year's digest and levy were properly advertised in the city's legal organ on July 26, 2020. Property taxes will be collected by the Walton County Tax Commissioner's Office. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the rollback rate.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Dickinson to roll back. Is there a second? Mr. Little? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Tonight, no update. We'll have a few things that we will talk about on Thursday. Please don't forget the retreat, and we are to be at the
South on Broad at 10 a.m.
South on Broad, 10 a.m. We'll have lunch, and it's going to be a good meeting, so I look forward to seeing all of you there. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley,
Second.
second by Ms. Malcolm. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.